Hare Krishna. I came to Krishna consciousness first in 1972. I was a student at Auckland University in New Zealand, and I had been searching for some time before, trying to find answers, trying to understand who I was and what my life should be, like that. So in order to try to answer those questions, I decided to go to university and study philosophy. So there I was, 1972, in Auckland University, New Zealand. It was in the middle of April, maybe on the 14th or so. And I had just come from a tutorial with one of the lecturers about different philosophical matters. And I was walking through the grounds of the university with a friend when from the right I heard a sound like little bells tinkling. So I looked across to the right, and there, maybe 20 meters away, something like that, there was Srila Prabhupada. He was walking through the grounds of the university, heading towards me. His head was up like this. He's looking down on the material world around him. The little tinkling bells, they were cartels, of course. And then on either side of Srila Prabhupada, right, very close, within maybe half a meter of him, on both his left and right sides, there were young female devotees in their early 20s or so, and they were dancing very gracefully with saris on, and each one of those two girls had baskets of rose petals. And as they're dancing very gracefully, very nicely next to Prabhupada, they were throwing the rose petals under his lotus feet. So it was such a beautiful scene. It was amazing. I couldn't believe it. And this thought just popped into my head. This must be like heaven. Just spontaneously. I didn't even really think about it. So there was Srila Prabhupada, and with these two young girls, and behind Prabhupada there was a group of devotees, maybe 5 or 6 or something like that, mainly young men wearing dhotis and kuritas, and they were having a little kirtan as they are walking with Srila Prabhupada. So in those days, it was the hippie days, and all the young men had long hair, and I also had long hair. And I saw these young male devotees with shaved heads, and I thought, oh, that's not very good. And then they were wearing dhotis and kuritas, and I'd not really seen people dressed like that, so it was difficult for me to relate with them, although I was struck very positively by Srila Prabhupada and his appearance and his demeanor. So they were moving towards me. Prabhupada walked right past me, and then he went just a little into the university, not far at all, into the quadrangle area in front of the cafeteria in the Auckland University. And there was a little stage which had been set up there, just something low, maybe a foot or 18 inches above the ground at the most. So Prabhupada and the devotees, they went and they sat on that stage, and then Prabhupada began kirtan. As I said, the other devotees, young devotees behind Prabhupada, as Prabhupada was walking, they were also having kirtan, But I was so much struck by Prabhupada and just the appearance of the scene that I didn't really notice what they were singing. But then when Prabhupada sat down on the stage and started singing the Hare Krishna mantra, then I recognized, oh, this is Hare Krishna. Because I'd heard the mantra before. It had been top of the pops some time before that, maybe a couple of years perhaps, something like that. It was a very popular song, and I was a big Hit Parade fan. So I'd heard the Hare Krishna mantra many times. And here now was Prabhupada singing Hare Krishna, and I recognized it. And this funny thought just came to me. I thought, oh, Hare Krishna, maybe he's Krishna. Anyway, Prabhupada sang for a little while, and Prabhupada then gave a lecture, which, because of his accent and my not being familiar with things, I struggled to really follow it nicely. But it was recorded, and later I read the recording. I read the transcription. It appeared as a lecture in Back to Godhead some years ago. And it was very amazing what Prabhupada was saying there to the students and to me. So that was my first real experience with devotees and the whole Krishna conscious situation, although I'd heard the mantra before. And of course, having seen Srila Prabhupada, it made a very deep impact on my heart. So I noticed that right from that time, my whole consciousness started changing. It was quite amazing. I was attending university, and there in Auckland, the university is very close to the center of the city. It's just a few hundred meters away. So I would go and walk through the city after lectures, down to the main bus terminal, and then I'd catch a bus home. So I would be walking down through the center of this quite big city, Auckland. But I was looking around, looking at the people working, running here and there, and busy in so many ways. And these thoughts just, every day they would come to me persistently and strongly, that what are these people doing? They're wasting their lives. They're wasting their time. They don't like what they're doing. They don't like their work. They're just doing it for money. And this is all, it's foolishness, and it's very unfortunate. So I found myself, every time I was walking through the city, I was thinking like that very strongly. And as a result, I became a little depressed because I didn't know what the alternative was. So I was seeing material life as being a dead end, and that was depressing. Anyway, a little later in the year, actually in August 72, I went to Australia and stayed with some friends in Sydney. And one of their friends was a sort of a devotee. Actually, those friends of mine, they were members of the Sydney surfing community. And one person they knew was very, very famous Australian surfer, professional, and like world champion, Ted Spencer. So this young fellow who was something of a devotee, not really a devotee, but he just had some association with this Ted Spencer. He came to the house one time where we were staying, and he knocked on the door, and he had this big, Simply Wonderful, really big. And he said, "Oh, this is from Ted Spencer. He wants you all to take a bite." So it was Simply Wonderful prasadam. So I had a bite of this Simply Wonderful, and I thought, wow, It really tastes very buttery, so it was a little overly rich for me. But that was the first prasadam that I had. And then later that year, it was probably in November, I went on a ship from Sydney via Melbourne, Perth, then Durban, South Africa, then Cape Town, South Africa, and one or two other places. I went to London, and I arrived there in the middle of, or perhaps later part really, of December of 72. So there I was, and I wasn't working, I had nothing really to do. So I would go to an esoteric, New Age type of bookshop called the Aquarius bookstore. It's just off New Oxford Street in the West End of London. I'd go there and look at books about mysticism and yoga and magical powers and all these really quite extraordinary things, because I was quite convinced that just ordinary material life was not really for me, and it just really wasn't the right thing. So I was really trying to find answers and understand who I am and what is life and what I should do. So on that ship coming over from Australia, I met a young man who was a devotee, a type of a devotee. And we were talking about what I was going to do when I arrived in London. And I said, yes, I'm going to visit yoga places and Buddhist monasteries and these types of spiritual places to try and get some answers. And he told me, you know what you must do? You must visit the Hare Krishnas, because they are the ones who really practice what they preach. That struck me. So there I was in the bookshop one day, and I asked the man from the shop, where's the Hare Krishna temple? And he said, oh, it's just on the other side of this block. Just go around the corner and you'll be there. So I did that and I arrived. It was the first few days of January 1973. I arrived at our temple in Berry Place in London, and the first devotee I walked in, and there was one devotee there. I asked him, are you a guru? And he looked at me and said, you're really spaced out. So then he just walked off and just left me there. And then down the stairs came Subhag Das, now Subhag Maharaj. At the time he was a brahmachari. So he came walking down the stairs, and I asked him, are you a guru? And he just laughed and said no, but he took me into the temple room, which was right there by the entrance, and showed me the deities and got me to chant Hare Krishna. And it was all making an impact on my heart. So I stayed for the whole day, and then I was coming back every day for a few days. And then on Sunday, the 7th of January 1973, I decided to move into the temple. Actually, on the first night, I had met the temple president, Dhananjaya Prabhu. And it's a long story, but we figured out that we're actually relatives. And then he told me, he asked me, what I was doing. I said, well, I'm trying to find the truth. And he said, well, this is the absolute truth. That really struck me. And then he invited me, please come and stay as a guest. So then I came on the 7th of January as a guest, and I'm still here, more or less as a guest in Srila Prabhupada's movement. Hare Krishna.